Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel for another midweek mystery. This week we're talking about another strange death, another Jane Doe case. You guys all really enjoyed my Isdale woman case that I filmed a couple of weeks ago and the Somerton man case I did before that. This is a very similar sort of situation. A woman has died under very suspicious and mysterious circumstances and nobody knows who she was or what happened to her. On June 3rd, 1995, a woman is found dead at the Oslo Plaza Hotel in Oslo, Norway. She was on the 28th floor in room 2805. She was found with a shot in her forehead with the gun still in her hand. So of course it sounds like a pretty clear-cut suicide, right? But let's go back to the very beginning of the story and start when she first checked into the hotel on May 31st, 1995. At 10:44 p.m, a woman walked up to the check-in desk of the Oslo Plaza Hotel and checked herself in as Jennifer Fergate. Now, hotels around this time required some form of ID to check in, a passport, a driver's license, usually credit cards, things like that. This case is really strange because very similarly to the Isdale woman case, this woman has managed to check into this hotel without any form of identification, it seems. She has just walked in, written all her details down and checked in. Now, her room had actually been booked under two names, Jennifer Fergate and Lois Fergate, but Jennifer turned up on her own to check in. Now, there's a few eyewitness accounts that state that Jennifer was with a man, quite a tall, dark man, aged between about 35 and 45 around this time, but that's never been confirmed. The police have never been able to find any man that she could have been with. There's no actual evidence apart from a couple of people saying that they saw her with a man. Could have just possibly been somebody that she was maybe chatting to in the queue or somebody who was stood next to her, or it could have been somebody suspicious, but the police have never been able to find out who this man was. At check-in, Jennifer stated that she was 21 years old. She checked in actually using a fake Belgian address, a fake phone number and a fake employer. Everything she wrote down on this form was fake. Now, there is a lot of confusion over this case because on the form, the receptionist actually written the names down as Lois and Jennifer Fergate, F-A-I-R Gate. However, because Jennifer didn't actually provide this woman with any form of identification, she's clearly heard the name wrong and has written it down as Fergate instead of Fergate. Jennifer has signed the form that she was filling in as Fergate, F-E-R. So there is a lot of confusion in this case over that name, but it was just a receptionist typo, so it's thought. Now, this hotel was a high-class, high-end hotel. It was quite expensive. It was nearly £300 to spend a night there, and so it's been really confusing to employees as to why this woman wasn't asked for any form of ID when she checked in. Now, I'm not sure if the police spoke to the receptionist that checked her in at the time. I'm assuming they did, but I couldn't find any information on that, so I can't really tell you anything about that. But I do know that a lot of employees have expressed concern that this woman was able to check in without any form of ID, and she also didn't pay anything up front. This woman stayed at this hotel for a number of days and never paid anything. Although this woman checked into the hotel as 21 years old, she was actually estimated to be between 25 and 35 years old, which is significantly older than she said she was. The woman had blue eyes, she had brown hair which was cut into a very short pixie crop style. She weighed about 67 kilograms and she was about 5'2" in height. The people who spoke to her at the hotel said she spoke both English and German very well, and she had no distinguishable accent of any kind. Over the next few days this woman was staying at the hotel, she used her key card a total of 5 times, which isn't that many times when you think about how often people tend to leave and re-enter their hotel room. Her keycard records also show that she kind of disappeared from her hotel room. Between the 1st and the 2nd of June, she actually left her hotel room for a total of 24 hours, and her actions are totally unaccountable in this time. So what happened to this woman in this 24 hours? Where did she go? After this 24 hours, on her return to the hotel, she walked up to the reception desk and extended her stay for an extra day until the Sunday. At 8 p.m. on June the 2nd, Jennifer called room service and she ordered bratwurst and potato salad, which was brought up to her room by a hotel worker, and she tipped this worker really well. Now, obviously I'm not that familiar with Norwegian currency, but from what I read, about 10 kroner would have been a good tip at this time, and she actually gave the hotel worker a 50 kroner tip, which was just a crazy amount for this time. The next day, Saturday, June 3rd, the receptionist realised that Jennifer hadn't actually paid any of her bills. She'd been staying in this hotel for 4 days now and hadn't paid a penny. They'd far exceeded their credit limit, so they sent up a notice to the hotel room Now, the notices actually went straight to the TV, so a message would have appeared on Jennifer's TV telling her that she exceeded her credit limit and she had to go and pay. Now, I couldn't get this fact totally straight because a lot of the articles I was reading was actually translated from Norwegian, so the English wasn't always perfect in them, but from what I could figure out, a few of these messages had been sent. I'm guessing maybe they stay up on the TV for a certain amount of time, or I'm not entirely sure how it works. From what I can gather, the last message that was sent up to the room was acknowledged by somebody in the room, and somebody clicked OK on the remote to say, yes, I've seen this message now. The receptionist was curious about what was going on, so called housekeeping to see if housekeeping had been in the room in the last couple of days, and they said they hadn't. On both the Friday and the Saturday there'd been a red do not disturb sign on the door, so of course housekeeping hadn't entered. The receptionist is more confused by this, and so calls security because she's a bit worried. The security guard who was on the night shift that evening was called Espen, and I can't even begin to pronounce the surname. It was like Nayes. I don't know how you pronounce the A and the E like joined together, but let's just call him Espen. So Espen goes up to the hotel room and he knocks on the door. He knocks and then hears a big bang, which he immediately recognises to be a gunshot. So he stands there for a little bit unsure of what to do. He decides to head back down to the office and grabs the head of security, who then goes back up to the room. Now, in the time between Espen leaving and the head of security coming up, there's probably about a 15-minute time gap in which anybody probably could have entered or left the room, and that's totally unaccounted for, but it's not thought that anybody did enter or leave the room for what that's worth. So the head of security knocks on the door and waits and has no response. So he knocks again and waits, and again there's no response. So the security in this hotel had access to all the rooms, it had key cards. So he went into the room, and what he noticed was the room was actually double locked from the inside. Now, regular hotel employee staff wouldn't be able to access, although they had like key cards to be able to access rooms, they couldn't access the rooms that had been double locked. Only security could have done that. So it's quite lucky that it was the head of security who was trying to get in, because he managed to unlock this double locked door and walk in. And he immediately noticed this acrid smell, this awful smell. The TV was on and it was very dark in the room. The window was ajar and the curtain was moving, and he immediately realised that something was wrong. Instead of entering the room any further, he turned round and immediately called the police. The police arrive and the woman is dead with a single bullet hole in her forehead. There was also another bullet hole in the pillow and the mattress next to where she was lying on the bed. It kind of seemed this first shot into the pillow and the mattress was a test shot, possibly using the pillow as a muffler to silence the gun. It was immediately thought that this case was suicide. There was nothing to say anything otherwise. It was just a pretty clear-cut, this woman has killed herself case. However, obviously, this is a Midweek mystery. There's lots of very strange circumstances surrounding this. The gun was of course analysed. It was a Browning 9mm gun, which doesn't mean anything to me, but if you know guns, then maybe it means something to you. And the serial number had actually been removed from the gun completely, and such a professional job had been done of removing the serial number that to this day they still haven't been able to figure out what it was. They did actually manage to trace this gun back to which factory it was made in and what year it was made in, but it didn't really lead anywhere. There wasn't really much information. Strangely enough, there were no fingerprints on the gun or the box of bullets that were nearby. There was a black briefcase and all that was inside was these bullets. The gun was covered in blood, but her hand had absolutely no blood or gun residue on it. You would think if she is shooting herself in the head, from the force of the shot, blood would spurt out and you would think you would get some on your hand. The gun was also held very strangely. Now, of course, imagine I'm holding a gun. Never done it in my life, but imagine I am. You sort of hold the gun, you hold the handle like this finger on the trigger, and then you sort of rest your thumb on the back. That is how you would generally shoot someone, I'm thinking. And if you're shooting yourself in the head, you would think you would do the same thing because you've got the most control doing it that way. However, the way this woman was found holding the gun was strange. Her thumb was the finger that was on the trigger, and maybe it might make more sense if she's shooting herself to do it that way, but I can't think you would have much control shooting with your thumb. I don't know, I'm sort of a bit torn on this fact, because I suppose it is easier to sort of, if you're shooting yourself in the head, to hold it like this. You've got such little control. The like drawback on the gun after you shot it would surely like throw the gun out of your hand or something. I don't really know, but that just strikes me as very odd. The room around her was spotlessly tidy, like almost clinically tidy. Both the key cards were inside the room, so nobody else had the key card to be able to access it from the outside, and there wasn't much luggage around. There was no passport, no wallet, no money, no cards, no driver's license, or I'm just reading from my list, no keys. There weren't even any toiletries or makeup. The only toiletry item they could find was a bottle of men's cologne, which had almost run out. And the clothing items she had in the room were even stranger. She had 4 jackets. One of them was a blazer, 3 of them were coats. She had 1 shirt, 1 sweater, 4 bras, no trousers or skirts of any kind, but she did have 2 pairs of like silky pajama short style items. But when this woman checked in, she was wearing a skirt or trousers. She didn't walk in not wearing any bottoms. So what happened to these? And again, really similarly to the Isdale woman case and the Somerton man case, all of the clothes labels had been removed. There were no labels in any of these clothes. Now, I don't know, maybe some people do like to remove the labels in their clothes. Maybe they itch them or they find them uncomfortable. But the fact that in the 3 very strange Jane and John Doe cases, these labels have been completely removed just strikes me as very strange. A couple of other facts about her stay in the hotel. During her stay, she had tried to call Belgium twice, but had had no answer either time. And the room only had this woman's fingerprints, like all over the room. There was no trace of anybody else being in this room at all, apart from on a magazine that was delivered to her room. Now the magazine, I think it had the numbers 2816 written on it, which strikes me as maybe it was meant to be for floor 28, room 16, but it had come to her room. The fingerprints on it could easily have been from a hotel worker or something, but regardless, the fingerprints from this magazine and both the woman's own fingerprints have been sent to Interpol, and there have been no matches. Her neighbours in the hotel, the people staying around her room, didn't hear anything at all. They didn't hear any gunshots, they didn't hear anything strange or suspicious coming from her room at any point during her stay. The police in this case have no clear suspects, and to be honest, I think that's because they weren't ever really looking for any suspects. This does seem like a pretty clear-cut suicide case, and I've got to agree with them. There's nothing here at all that could suggest that this was done by anyone other than the woman herself. And they don't know who this woman was. Her name was fake. Everything she provided was totally fake. They've never been able to trace her back to anywhere. The only interesting suspect or like piece of evidence in this case is a man called Mr. F. Now records show that Belgian man was staying in the hotel on the same floor as Jennifer when she died, or just before she died. Now the Belgian man was there on business in Oslo, and he stayed in the room opposite to hers. Now from what I could find, the police never actually spoke to him, but the media did manage to trace him, and they were emailing him, and he stopped replying as soon as they mentioned this woman who had died under suspicious circumstances in the hotel that he was staying in. They didn't hear from him for a couple of days, and then he replies and says, "Oh yeah, I remember it, it happened." He basically called back and said that he was in the hotel and he remembered it very well because as he was checking out, the receptionist asked him if he had seen or heard anything from the room. Now strangely enough, the man had checked out before this woman had killed herself. He had checked out on June the 2nd and Jennifer had killed herself on June the 3rd. So why would he say this? I'm thinking maybe he was sort of coerced into saying it by the media. He maybe sort of felt pressured into a corner and thought he had to say something. Maybe he just wanted to be a part of it. There's a lot of people who probably say things they shouldn't say if they're like put into a corner. I still think he's a very suspicious person, like a person of interest in this case, but I don't think it necessarily means he had anything to do with it. As in a lot of Jane and John Doe cases, the woman's teeth have been recently exhumed for analysis purposes. I think her entire grave has actually recently been exhumed and is being analysed by forensic scientists, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Like I said, most of the sources I was trying to like get information from were all in Norwegian. But they did the standard tooth enamel isotope test, and the test actually revealed that she was from Germany, very likely northern Germany, which makes sense because the eyewitnesses did say that she spoke fluent German, and they have sort of pinpointed it to northern Germany. From what I could gather, they've actually got even more specific than that. They can zone in even more than just like northern Germany, but I don't think this has led them any closer to being able to find out who this woman was. Her autopsy obviously confirmed the obvious. She had been killed by a single shot to the head, but it did reveal one interesting fact. This food that Jennifer had ordered on June the 2nd, about 8 PM, the bratwurst and the potato salad, hadn't been eaten for a whole 24 hours pretty much. She'd only eaten it about 2 hours prior to her death. So who would get room service ordered to their room and then not eat the food as soon as it arrives? It would have obviously been freezing and probably a little bit gross by the time she'd finally eaten it, about 22 hours later. So why would she have left it sat there for so long? In this time, she ordered no other food to the hotel, so this might have been all she'd eaten in that time. And that is pretty much all of the information that we have on this case. Jennifer Fergate is not her real name. The address, phone number and employer she provided when checking in were not any of her actual information. Nobody knows who this woman was. It's likely she was from Germany, but that's about it. That's all they've got. But the question begs, why did she do this? Did she do this to herself? I do think that she had done it to herself. I don't think anybody had broken in and murdered her. They wouldn't have had any escape route really. The room was double locked from the inside, so Jennifer couldn't have locked herself once this person had left because she would have been dead. It would have been an instant death. Although the window was open in her room, it was a solid glass drop 28 floors down. Nobody could have escaped out the window. The big question here is, why did she do this to herself? Who was she running from? Who was she hiding from? If you're going to commit suicide, why go to such an extent to make sure that your true identity is never found out? Makes me think that she was hiding from someone, she was scared, or maybe she was scared that her family would be ashamed of her and never wanted them to know what she had done. Of course, all missing people's databases have been checked and nobody really matches up to her description. She was clearly a very stylish woman. All of the mock-up drawings that I've seen of her depict her in very fashionable clothing for the day in 1995. It's just very strange. The number one thing that strikes me in this is, where were her clothes? Where were her trousers? Where were her skirts? What had she done with them? What had somebody else done with them? There are so many questions and I just cannot answer any of them. But there is of course the age-old theory that possibly she was a spy and she was murdered in her room by somebody. But like I said, I'm not going to go too much into murder theories because there is literally nothing to back up a theory of a murder. Maybe she was a spy and she was killed by government officials or somebody, which would explain why there is nothing to be found. It's a long shot, I don't really know. Let me know down below what you think, and if you like this video, please make sure you give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I want to say thank you so much for helping me reach 30,000 subscribers. That is such a crazy huge number, and honestly at this point my ego is just like getting a little bit out of control. But thank you so much for subscribing to me and my little channel. I can't believe how much I've grown the past couple of months. I've been on YouTube for 4.5, nearly 5 years at this point. So the fact that I'm only just beginning to grow is kind of amazing to me. So thank you so much. As I'm posting this, I'm in Copenhagen, so there won't be any video on Friday. There might be one on Monday, but you'll probably see me next week for another Midweek mystery video. So thank you for watching. Bye.